Good morning. We are live from the broadcasting house here in the county of Nairobi. My name is Bentro Njwe. Thank you so much for making time for KBC News Check, a program that is designed to ensure that we keep you in the know on all the latest happening here in the country. And talking about the latest happening, a lot has been happening, and especially when we talk about matters leadership and governance. Just to mention a few that will be forming the basis of our discussion today. The Finance Act. We were talking about for months now, finance bill. But yesterday in the morning, President William Ruto assented to that finance bill. And so it's no longer a finance bill, it is a finance act. In short, it is the law. And you do remember that the MPs also gave the nod. So it only waited for the presidential assent, which he did yesterday. Remember, all the changes in the Finance Act that we have right now that were made by Parliament will kick in beginning 1st of July. So meaning Thursday in the evening is when we cease using the 2022-2023 Finance Act and now adopt the Finance Act 2023-2024. Thank you indeed so much for joining us. We would like you also to be part of this program. You can weigh in, you can give us your suggestions, comment, questions, or even where you are watching us. We are also live on all our social media platforms. Welcome. Just mentioned the Finance Act. Another thing that has happened in the last couple of days and we were keeping a keen eye on is on the impeachment of William Oduor as the DG, or the Deputy Governor for Siaya County. Well, the committee had recommended that he be ousted from office, that is the 11-member committee, but he was saved the last minute by the House, of which it votes. The Kenya Kwanza side's votes were actually a little bit more than the Azimio ones, and so Oduor will continue to be the Deputy Governor for the great people of Siaya County. And also one thing that we are expecting today is that according to Azimio, they have talked about in regards to the now Finance Act, they are going to be consulting with Kenyans, and so they have organized what they are calling a consultative forum at the Kamukunji grounds. But somebody might wonder, are we going to experience exactly what we experienced a few months after the elections during the Azimio demos? Well, let's wait for the consultative meeting, as they like to call it. Of course, there are a number of activities that are also currently happening in the country. We have several parliamentary committee meetings today, and a number of MPs yesterday had quite busy. They were quite busy yesterday, and today in the morning it's no difference as well. We are also keeping tabs with the second national conference on justice systems in Kenya that is currently underway at the Tangaza University, and also the signing of the Atkins International Limited Design contract for Nairobi Railway City project. Just some of the key issues that we are keeping tabs right here on KBC, and most of which we'll be carrying in our news. Welcome again to News Check. Well, I have said a lot, but allow me to introduce my panelists, beginning with my immediate left. He is a doctor. His name is Harun Isaac Hassan. Harun Isaac Hassan is also a leadership and governance expert. Doc, it's also good to see you again. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Just next to him, we have Newton Ogada. Newton Ogada is a philanthropist and also the director of God Will Provide Children's Home. And in your capacity here, you said that you will be coming here to speak as a Kenyan, because, of course, what we passed as the Finance Act is going to affect all of us for the next 1 year. And also, I'm also expecting Honorable Alpha Miruka, who is the Bomachoge Chache MP, who is supposed to be getting into the conversation a little bit later, and also Ronald Kambi, who is an advocate of the High Court. And we really do need an advocate of the High Court at this panel, because not only did Senator Okia Mtata talk about or even go to court in regards to the now Finance Act, we are also expecting the Civil Societies Act. They say that if at all this is passed the way it is, we will have to go and seek redress or constitutional interpretation in the corridors of justice. Well, thank you so much indeed for joining us. Remember, our social media platform would like it to be quite robust today, because this conversation that we are having is a conversation for all the Kenyans. First things first, gentlemen. Yesterday in the morning, the president did give his signature, appended his signature to the finance bill, then, which now becomes the Finance Act. I would just like to sample, it's a discussion that we're going to get a little bit deeper in, but I would like to sample your reactions, Doc, as a governance expert.
Thank you very much, Ben. We know very well that we have talked about a financial bill quite a long time. It has been politicized, and it was never been looked into objectively. It was a political battle that both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio parliamentarians were fighting on. Eventually, significant number of amendments were made based on the contributions from citizens, as well as pressure from Azimio. I believe part of the things that has forced those amendments or made those amendments, formed those amendments were generally because of pressures from outside, not the will of any expert who looked into the depth of that financial bill and looked at the consequences that is likely to be, observed once that is turned into law.
Okay.
So the concept is that now with those amendments, it has been now made a law. Now we have to shoulder it as it is, based on the few amendments that has been made. We may not be very sure who are the winners or who are the losers in terms of the amendment or in terms of the bill sailing through, but we know very well, and we are certain that Kenyans will going to buy it a very strong economy.
All right.
That will going to push them into difficult times that is expected. We know there's a lot of inflation at the moment.
Yes.
Even over our currencies, dollars have gone up to 140. Sometimes it goes in the black market up to 145. Wow. Other currencies are similar, and that means as Kenyans being known for living on currencies that are products that are exported, imported from other countries, then we know Kenyans will have to bite that difficult time and know that the financial law or the Finance Act for this year will be a difficult thing for them.
All right.
I wanted just to mention the issue of exportation.
Okay, actually I wanted us just to have a feel, because we're going to dive to greater heights and depth. Newton Ogada, I remember the budget committee chairman, Kimani Kuria, said that this year's finance bill then was the most robust and the most that Wanjiku has put in. As a Kenyan, do you really feel that the public participation was quite robust and it represents what Wanjiku would want in the next 1 year?
Yeah, the problem we have is our member of parliament did something opposite. Because now I cannot say it is the ruling party or the opposition party, but they could have listened to the cry of the people. Because when you look at the media, all the cries about this financial bill, which now it's a financial act, it has been so difficult even before this act came in. And when the member of parliament were voting about this, you remember, one grouping said we will pass it without even changing a comma, which means it was not something which there was bargaining.
It was already cast in stone.
Yeah. There was a discussion outside the parliament, and the majority decided to do it. So what helped it a little bit is about the opposition, which made a lot of noise, and they just played cool to reduce it from 3% to 1.5%, which actually, if you look into it, is bringing down everything. If we talk about this bill or act, because already the president has signed it, you will see that the fuel price, they added twice. It is it's a double thing, from 8% to 16%. What does that mean to common mwananchi? We have Mama Mboga, we have Boda Boda, we have Wheelbarrow, according to their proposal. How will a boda guy fuel his motorbike or her motorbike to do his useful business? And then we still think it is now a bottom-up system. So to me, I think before the president had signed this document, he could have listened to the cry of the people, and they could actually rectify what they put as a bill.
All right, and it's a good thing that you have pointed out a few things that indeed we were waiting for the MPs to make a logical decision, and especially on the fuel, because it formed the bulk of the discussion in Parliament. But at the end of the day, it wasn't changed. It was, the proposal was 16%, and that is exactly what, during the 87 amendments, we saw that some were thrown out and some were adopted. But all right, let's first of all rope in another guest who has just arrived. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, Ronald Kambi. Karibu sana, Ronald.
Thank you, thank you.
Let's just throw you to the deep end. We are looking at just a feel of the Finance Act, which was assented to by the president yesterday. And I had mentioned earlier on is that the Busia Senator, Okia Omtata, who is also an activist, has already moved to court, had actually moved to court before the finance bill became an act yesterday. And there are some of the redress that he is seeking from the corridors of justice. I would like you to have a feel of that.
My brother, what is there is that when the president was doing campaigns, he had a social contract with the Kenyans that the cost of living was to tremendously drop. Actually came up with a slogan called Hustler, the Hustler, the Mama Mboga government. And what you can know very well is that the powers of the president come from the people under Article 1, Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya. And actually what is there, why Omtata is going to court, and his court currently is believing that there was no public participation, or if there was public participation, those proposals in the public participation were not catered for in this Finance Act, which shall be enforced as from 1st of July. And I humbly requesting that the judges who are handling this matter to just use the Solomonic wisdom the way they have been using, so that they can just do what we call as to stop this act of parliament, because it's absolutely draconian to the local mwananchi. Why Omtata has gone to court is that he's believing that for example, the housing, this housing levy is not anchored in any law. It's not anchored in the constitution, because the local mwananchi has a freedom of choice. There are people who have houses wherever they're coming from. They are believing that we are servicing mortgages, and we have a fundamental human right in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. They are believing that we ought to have been consulted. We cannot be able to be paying the mortgages for the house. We don't know where it is situated. We were not consulted on where the house wishes to be situated. And also, it's also going to is also challenging this what we call as the increment of the fuel levy from 8% to 16%. Is believing that there were amendments in the public participation. The Mwananchi had said that that one is a bit draconian, and the powers the MPs have and the president has comes from the constitution. They are believing that actually this act of parliament, the public participation, the proposals which were amended, these proposals were not entrenched in the amendments which they were yearning for.
All right, and still we will be talking about what sort of redress the anybody who goes to court, not only Okia Omtata, civil societies have also threatened, and even the Federation of Kenya Employers has talked about whatever happened in the amendments was not quite exactly what they wanted, and what are some of the changes that can be after already we've passed the finance bill to a finance act. But that's a little bit later. We're talking about public participation. It's a good thing that everybody has mentioned that. And one thing, if you're talking about public participation, like we did in the 2010 Constitution, I remember I was part of the media before we promulgated it. We ensured that that the Constitution is not only translated, it gets to each and every household wherever you are. It was a big campaign. But when we look at the finance bill, it has never been translated into Swahili. And the time that we talk about since the finance bill into the enactment to a finance act, the time is so limited. Doc, I would like to pick your mind on how the public participation, it's a good, Wakili has mentioned that they're talking about whatever that happened in the public participation. We are not quite seeing it in the Finance Act.
Yeah, a number of things have happened in this country in terms of constituting laws in this country. You know, our initial law that was governing us, our constitution, was adopted from our colonists. Later, on self-interest, leadership has changed few clauses, or many clauses, if I may say it, for their own self-gain in terms of governing, in terms of their knowledge, in terms of how they could, you know, craft their own constitution. Then the 2010 Constitution came into being. Then when the 2010 Constitution came into being, the process was hefty and long. There was pull and that angle you and every pass towards how best he can accommodate areas that will go into favor him in the event that this particular person will be in leadership of this country. Eventually we ended up collecting clauses from different modernized or civilized or developed countries and put into our constitution with minimal input that we have used a lot of resources to collect from Wananchi. You remember the team who are leading the constitutional process went every part of this country, but the information they gained from the citizens of this country in terms of participation, and which would have been known to influence you know, the decision or the final product of the laws that will be governed in this country was not you know, adopted. Similarly, these are traditional things that we may always talk about public participation, and it is just for purposes of ticking the clause, or what do you call the checklist, that we have had a public participation, and therefore certain laws pass on. For example, let me give you one thing. The house levy initially was crafted in a manner that if you are given, if you contribute 3%, you as an employee, and your employer contributes 3%, which is 6%, this becomes a contribution like savings. But when situation changed and quite a number of pressure came up and said, hey, some of us were already paying mortgages, some of us were already engaged in other source of you know, housing, some of us were already having our ancestral houses. We don't need houses, actually, we need other priorities, we have other priorities. So on that aspect, what happens is that when participation was conducted, significantly, all Kenyans says we don't need this because we already have our own pressure. Then what happens? A proposal was raised to reduce the amount, and then the amount has been converted into tax. And then the tax, the percentage has been increased from the initial net salary to the gross salary percentage, which is basically they are still collecting the 3%. Because if the amount of money that has been, you know, has been denominated with the percentage is the gross, then you will eventually still have double of what you expected to get. And then on this aspect, at this point in time, the law says that you will contribute as a tax and there will be no return. I don't think it will be like the way the housing finance is. It's like the way other entities, people collect taxation and resources, and people in power, people who are who are responsible for those resources, will be using it based on priorities they think is priority for them, but it will never be priority for Kenyans. So the bottom line is that it has been put into law. We know very well the participation that that has been made, which thank you very much. The digital world tells us, gives us information every day, and everything is done openly. So we already know what the submissions were made by the public in regards to certain clause or certain laws in the financial law, in the current financial law, that they wanted either to be removed or they wanted it to be amended. If that has not been followed, and we already have record of that, and we know that things have been passed cosmetically, showing that it has been slightly amended based on contribution from the public, which in essence, if you go into that document in detail, you will not going to find those changes significantly where those changes were intended for. That means then, I think the law is as it was crafted, no commas, as my brother has put it very well, the way it has been taken into Parliament, the way they say that it will never be changed, even a comma. I don't think the changes they made will have a significant impact and meet the threshold of what they said. The comma will not be changed. I think I believe that they have not changed any comma.
Okay, of course, there were 87 amendments, but there are some that Kenyans were quite anticipating that they're going to be changed, and especially on the fuel and the housing. But Newton, let me play the devil's advocate here. The housing fund was enshrined in Kenya Kwanza manifesto, and we elected Kenya Kwanza, and now Kenyans are crying foul and saying these are things we don't know, what is this, but it was in the manifesto. So Kenyans kind of didn't actually read the manifesto well, because that was supposed to be there. Because if I told you today that I want to be your MP and I want the first thing when I get into office, I want a 2 million shillings salary or 5 million shillings, and if you elect me, I'm going to do exactly that.
Let me say that there's much which was not done right, because I did not support the Kenya Kwanza, so I was not even listening to their
You supported Azimio?
Yes, I was Azimio supporter. Then the truth of the matter is, we had this housing even before Kenya Kwanza. We have railways which did build a lot of housing here, and nobody was taxed. The government looked for their own money and built the housing, and then whoever want to buy this house will stay here for a number of years. By the time you're paying your house rent, that's how you pay back to the government. There was no good consultation between who is to pay what. Because number one, for example, I'm living in the community where you will find a teacher is a beneficiary to the family. He's the only one, is the breadwinner. When he goes to work and get paid maybe 23 to 50,000, this money is the only money that the entire family, most of if you're the first one, will use to go to school, will use to eat, and you will even build your house and your mother's house with it. And if I just want to talk a little bit about even the teaching, their circle. They have a circle where they borrow money and build their own houses. Then you are allowed to go to the bank and get money to build your own house. And then you pay it as per the agreement with whoever is borrowing you. But this one that we are seeing here today, we have not been told who is going to live in this house, even if it's been reduced to 1.5%. How long will you know that I'm going to pay it? The situation of this country now does need a house. Because I've been to all other countries. We have other countries that they have those who doesn't have house totally. They live in the street, the homeless people. But here the homeless we have are just guys from the street here, which the government has not done nothing to support. I have nothing against the house levy or to build housing. But according to the situation of economy, as we speak today, it doesn't allow us to do. It's like you're in your own house and you cannot manage to have a meal, but you're planning and taking loan to buy a vehicle. I know we may need a vehicle to drive. You may need something else, but you cannot wake up in the morning and you buy a vehicle while your child cannot go to school because of school fee. Buying a vehicle is not bad, but paying school and buying a vehicle, these are two different things, and the one that you need is that. When I was going through, I checked and I found that the employment rate in this country is 5.74%. Then the 5.74%, which are in the employment, will not manage to pay everything. Even if you cannot, you will never manage. And I've never seen a country which is being managed by taxes from those who are not working. My thoughts or my wishes was, if this Kenya Kwanza government could have think widely, the best they could have done, number one, is to look for investors and find out how each and every county can have maybe an industry which manufacture one thing, and they will employ, because when I give you a business, you don't come with workers. You will get workers from my own country. And then when you work with them and you pay them, then now I can get that tax from whoever is working. But now, we have a number who are not working. They have never been employed anywhere in the world. They are just surviving with motorbike here. And you are telling them, if you stop here, you have to pay. And let me tell you, we don't have only this tax that we are talking about. The county government has their own tax. You will find the same motorbike guy is being taxed by the county government of using or doing their transport. Then you will find when you are opening like a small shop, the county government will come and you will pay for license. And then after that, then you have to pay the tax of what you're doing. So it is not just one tax. Most of Kenyans, we are only looking about the finance bill, it's becoming an act and all, what have you. But we have the county there which you cannot even open a shop without paying the tax through the licensing. You know, so if you check into this, we are going to get into a coma. And I'm disappointed somehow with our constitution that allows 180 members of parliament to pass something without consulting everybody. Because I know, even them who passed this thing to be an act, they did not like it. Because when you go back home, I'm living...
So good we have Mheshimiwa now here, he can tell us whether, you know...
I'm living next to my area, my former area MP. If you go to their home, because Mheshimiwa is there, their home is full. Like, if you go there in the morning, you'll find maybe 200 people are there waiting to see him. He have to part with money. Even now, if he's going home over this weekend, he has to go with some change. And this money is not going to help him because, number one, the sugar that they were buying, you can give somebody 200 things to buy, go buy sugar, maybe soap and something. Now the sugar is 200 plus. June 27th. But on 1st July, this sugar is going to rise again. Because of the fuel levy that they did not even reduce with 1%. Right?
Okay.
When the fuel is up, let me explain a little bit. Everything is going to rise. Which means even him, when he's going back home, if he was giving 200 shillings, you have to add to be 500 shillings for this person to get even a soap and a sugar. So to me, I think Kenyans should come down again and we discuss this thing widely and we see what we can do about it.
All right, let me first of all hear from Mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Actually, we now have Alpha Miruka, Honorable Alpha Miruka, who is the Bomachoge Chache Member of Parliament. And listening to what these three gentlemen are talking about, it's quite evident that I believe you will be on one side because they are not supporting the Finance Act that was assented by the head of state yesterday, but you're part of the 188 members of parliament who passed that bill. And I remember your budget chairman, Kimani Kuria, Kimani Kuria, Molo member of parliament. I remember him saying that in this year, this was the most elaborate and robust public participation that has ever taken place before a finance bill is passed. And a lot of Kenyans, everywhere, they were quite against the 8% to 16% VAT on fuel and fuel products. And you guys went ahead and voted as a bloc, the Kenya Kwanza bloc, and even some of the MPs from the opposition also. Is that the real picture on the ground? Because Mheshimiwa, you always go to Bomachoge Chache. Is that the feel that wananchi are so, hey, you've done a good job in passing that bill?
Thank you very much. I want to start saying, First of all, thank you for this opportunity.
Welcome.
I really like KBC because it's our #1 channel. Finance bill, let's start about the history of our budget making. I'm lucky to be serving my second term in the 13th Parliament. In the 12th Parliament, finance bill came in 2018. At every start of any government, we must have a finance bill. And the essence of a finance bill is to prove to the budget that this budget I'm making, this is how I'm raising the revenue to fund the budget. Now, in 2018, drastic changes in the finance bill were so deep than now. In fact, the mood of the members during that time, 100% were against. That's the time now, petroleum products, we introduced now 80%. Actually, it was 16%, but after making a lot of changes, they allowed 8%. During that time, they were reducing CDF. During that time, they were reducing GAF. They had a lot of drastic changes, which every member of parliament was against. But at long last, that finance bill passed because it must fund the current government during that tenure. Now coming to this financial bill 2023.
This is an act now.
Yeah, it's not an act. It's obvious now you must be ready to part with the 1.5% housing levy. Now if you earn more than 500,000, prepare 5% increase in your pay. Now there's a lot of changes. Now,
but you haven't answered my question. Is that exactly the feel of the residents of
I want to explain. I want to explain. There is no change anybody will accept. Me, I shall go to the ground. But remember, this process of a finance bill and budget making is purely parliamentarians. Now, remember the common mwananchi there, most of them, they are not employed. They don't have pay slips. Are you getting it right? They expect a member of parliament to come and give them what you promised in your manifesto. Before they elect you, you give them what you are going to do. Now, the common mwananchi in my constituency is waiting how Alpha is going to deliver what he promised them. And for you to deliver is getting money. Now, for this government, Kenya Kwanza government, is trying to maneuver ways of raising revenue within our scope. That we're able now to fund our projects, we're able to fund our schools, we're able to fund our every aspect in our proposal or every aspect in our manifesto is being funded from within. Now, passing a finance bill, it's a milestone for this government. My concern maybe is that after generating all this revenue, correcting all this revenue, is it going to be to the intended purpose? That's why in Parliament you see a lot of amendments. Amendment #1 was about the housing levy. Housing levy was supposed to be 3%
of the basic pay.
Of the basic pay. And it has a cap of 5,000. That means nobody will be deducted more than 5,000. But now you will find a small pay slip will pay more than a bigger pay slip in terms of basic pay. That proposal had no equity. But after public participation, now people brought in a lot of memorandums to the committee. I'm not part of the committee. The way the chair was explaining, the people suggested that we must be having equity. That's why they reduced it from 3% to 1.5%. Now this,
but it's 1.5% of the gross pay.
Now,
so
this
basically what you're supposed to pay at 3% is the same thing I'm going to pay at 1.5% based on my pay.
Now it's affecting anybody now. If I earn 500,000,
plus 1 minus 1.
No. There is something I want you to explain to understand. Before 1.5, it has a cap of 5,000.
Yes.
But after now 1.5, it has no cap. That means if I earn 500,000, it is 1.5 of my basic pay, my gross pay. Now that amount of money is not equal with somebody who wants 20,000. Now it brings equity.
So it was a matter of equity as well.
It's
at the end of the day, people were against it. And so what the budget committee did in Naivasha is recommend some of the amendments and then brought the amendments to Parliament, which you guys voted for until some minutes past midnight.
And remember, the amendments they usually come from public participation. What people suggest.
But many people don't want.
No, as per your perception, but as per that chairman, most people, he has a lot of memorandums, he has a lot of public participation input from the people. Because the people who suggested that, I don't want, if you want to tax me, I don't want to come and pick that money because it will be having a problem. As per the chairman, that's why they bring in 1% deduction, which is one way, not two way. You'll never receive it now. It become a tax.
All right. Mheshimiwa, I'm going to ask you also in regards to how you guys voted, because we saw more or less like a trend. Let's be very honest, the tyranny of numbers that played out during the parliament. And yesterday we saw the same thing. Even after a committee had recommended that the DG should not be in office, well, the voting did something quite different from that. Maybe that is exactly what panned out.
No, there's
during
something
the
I want you to compare. I want to tell you something very bold about National Assembly. The finance bill 2018, everybody was against. Because that time we had bosses. We had CORD and we had Jubilee. But financial 2023 substantially voted for it in the House. That means it's a bit convincing and appealing to most members of Parliament.
All right, we're going to get back to that.
Before Mheshimiwa goes off the hook, because I'm a politician like him,
yes,
I want to challenge him a bit. Mheshimiwa, there's one thing that you have mentioned in reference to 2018 and 2023. Yes. That is fine. It is the duration and the kind of economy that we are running at that particular time. The situation between 2018 and 2023 is totally different. Globally, you know, there was a pandemic of COVID-19. There was heavy drought, climate issues that
2020.
Yes, that I mean, it happened before, after the bill of 2018, and therefore what we are anchoring our argument on is that from 2018, was the situation constant? Was it the same that warrants there was significant changes in terms of our life? The life of the Kenyans, and therefore that forces us in 2023 we must fund the current demand of the present government, or we look at the economy and the situation of the country versus what people can contribute. Tax is part of the system. It's a contractual agreement between the government of the day as well as the citizen of the country. We are not saying tax should not be paid, but shall we pay tax based on an emotional feelings that you want to make a significant change all of a sudden and without considering other underlying factors? Number two, you know very well, politicians have two masters. One is the people who have elected them, and the other one is the party that they used as a vehicle. However, when you look at the interest between the two, and of sometimes even the government of the day, for purposes of being given consideration to serve your people better, so that you are allocated some resources, or you are heard where in any conversation where government will be doing a positive things for the citizen of the country.
All right.
But the point is only one that I want to bring, which supersedes between the people who have elected you to that house and the party you have used, or the government of the day, which supersedes the other. In my understanding, in my belief, is that our politicians have taken their priority and their king as the government of the day, as well as the vehicle that has taken them there for purposes of their own interest.
And I think Doc is
they know very well.
I remember even the presidents were talking about giving more or less a thin-veiled threat that I want to see a member of parliament who would vote against this. A lot of Kenyans felt that that was a little bit more extreme.
A very critical point there. When we are campaigning, this is start of the term. We are now roughly 1 year down the track. When you are campaigning, you have a manifesto. Now the people are voting you because of what you are planning to do for them. That means once you are elected, it's your responsibility to craft a way that at the end of your term, you have delivered your manifesto.
Can I ask
a simple question? Let me just finish and then...
The reason why I compared, for example, in this budget, there is an increase in CDF. CDF we have increased from the current allocation as per the formula which is going to be allocated during that time. A minimum is going to be an addition of 20 million and a maximum of 40 million. You see, this budget has given more to Mwananchi in terms of service delivery, in terms of giving more money,
Before
in terms of improving, let me finish. In terms of improving the way service is being delivered compared to others. That's number one. Point number two, Bomachokas, as the people judge me at the end of it, what have I done in this span of 5 years? If you want to tell me now they don't want a finance bill, and they tell you we don't want this as per me, are you hearing it? And at long last, after 1 year, they need a road. They need CDF in terms of bursaries. They need our schools to be improved. What people look at the bottom line there is what are you able to deliver?
All right, we need to change something on your mic. Yes.
Just one point. Mheshimiwa is saying, talking about CDF and roads. We had CDF and roads before election of 2022. And all our roads, I'm sure you are working on them in your constituency. The problem here is not about the additional money that we are going to give to CDF. The problem here is what we add again, the house levy, the fuel. Because number one, if somebody is getting 23,000 shillings, for an example, this person was being deducted NHIF, NSSF. This person was been paying pay. And then you add another load on top of this one, but you have not talked with this or her employer to add him or her salary. Which means if somebody was earning 23,000, it's going back home with zero. Because you have to pay what you have been paying, and again, there's another increment which are not there. Number two, most of if you look at the employment rate in this country, the government employ the fewer people. We have individuals who employ people in their private companies. This person, they add tax on these people, on these investors. How will an investor pay more tax? Let me tell you, Mheshimiwa, the truth of the matter. Before we look about the roads that we are going to drive on, we need to look about the investors who are now carrying their company back and they're going to other countries.
Okay. Mheshimiwa, I'm quite sure you're getting a lot of backlash because a lot of my panelists are not supporting the Finance Act.
No,
and actually sometimes he's mentioning about priorities.
No, before that,
yes.
He's trying to tell me that don't mind about road. I want to ask him, do you mind how the source of this money is coming from?
Yes, I mind.
No. The side you are trying to talk about kwamba amekato hiyo mshahara. Do you mind where it's coming from? Let me tell you, this is the first time in history of Kenya we are paying your salary using a local revenue. Otherwise, we have been paying your salary using loans.
What about the private sector?
Okay.
No.
Yes, and we're going to get
the reason why the financial bill of 2023 is coming to place is to solve a problem of depending investors, depending loans to pay up to your salary. Remember, in this budget, we have reduced the borrowing from 1.2 trillion to 700 billion. We have reduced almost 500 billion because of this. If we keep on with those measures, at long as 5 years, we may find ourselves depending on our own revenue to make sure our government is moving than borrowing up to your salary.
All right. Let's
just one before he goes.
We just hear what Ronald. Just a minute, though, please, because at the end of the day, all these things are going to cascade to court, and they already had started. And I would like us to know how far can we stretch in the court. What can be amended, what cannot? If the MPs themselves have already given the nod and the president already has made it a finance act, which is now law. What are some of the remedies? Because a lot of Kenyans also are raising issues, and especially on the fuel.
Thank you, my brother Ben. As a legal scholar, I can say like this. I said under Article 1, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya, the powers the MPs have, they come from the people of the Republic of Kenya. When you go to Article 2 of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, it says that the Constitution is the supreme law. Any law which contravenes the Constitution is null and void. Now, come here. I've looked at my brother, Alpha, my good MP, I come from KC. Is now justifying that money is going to improve the CDF, which was declared unconstitutional by our courts. The Kenya is a country under the rule of law. I've said very clearly, we are coming with the housing levy, which is purported.
It's not a tax.
It's
not a tax.
It's not a tax.
It's not a tax under
Yes.
it is not the Finance Act. It was assented yesterday. I'm duly aware of that. However, there is no act of parliament regulating this housing scheme in Kenya. That means there is, I am comparing it to the Hustlers Fund. This thing is not anchored in any law. That means it's going to be having a lot of money which is going to be embezzled. And the local mwananchi, and as what we call as no, even Alpha, my brother from Machoge Chache, I know very well. They voted in Parliament without considering the wishes of the mwananchi, because this Finance Act 2023 is going to be a burden, because we are now going to have a lot of unemployment opportunities. The employers cannot shoulder that kind of burden. We are going to have a lot of cost of living because the fuel levy, the VAT has been improved from 18 to 16. That means the farmer is going to incur a lot of costs in terms of transport to bring the food to the market. Who is going to incur this? It is the local mwananchi, the taxpayer. Look here, when Mike Kibaki was leading this country in 2010, he said Kenya is an agricultural country. He proposed this way: we can have what we call as agricultural development strategy. He came with a blueprint dealing with it. He looked, and as an economist, he said Kenya is a production country in terms of agriculture. And when we were in the primary, we were told ukulima ndio uti wa mgongo wa taifa le.
It still is.
And it still is. And Mike Kibaki in 2010, he came with a blueprint. He said agricultural sector development strategy 2020 blueprint, which was to increase agriculture. And then when we had the Jubilee government, it abandoned that blueprint. It went to massive following. And now we have the Kenya Kwanza government. It has also abandoned that blueprint. It has resorted to inserting unnecessary burdens to the local mwananchi without following the constitution. I'm seeing this as an independent judiciary. I'm looking at a scenario whereby it will nullify, it will declare that act of parliament. And I am, before I finish, Ben, and I make it beseech the judges who are handling this case to be guided by the Solomonic wisdom. And they look at the moods of the people on the ground. The mwananchi are yearning for reforms.
All right, let's do some scenarios.
Yes.
Okiya Omtata has already challenged that in court, and some civil societies have also had already threatened that if at all it is ascended to, it is going to be law, and we are going to be using the Finance Act. But we say that we will go to court. What are some of the remedies that we can have there as we have?
The High Court has the powers to ensure that there is enforcement of the Constitution. I've said under Article 2 of the Constitution of Kenya, any act of parliament which is passed should be in tandem with the Constitution. And now the High Court may look at it and say there was no freedom of choice. The freedom of choice, which is a fundamental right, was not taken into consideration, and the act may be declared null and void, and it will not see the light of the day. All right,
Doc and Mheshimiwa, you're going to be responding to that, but let's talk about that's a good thing. Gentlemen, we will actually, we have to take that break.
There's nothing which will pass in Parliament without.
Actually, let's first of all take the break and ventilate. Gentlemen, let's have a decorum here. We are going to be ventilating on that, but let's first of all take a quick break. When we come back, of course, we will continue with this discussion. We saw even the tyranny of numbers, but we will talk about that when we come back.